much, Simon, for making your appearance.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you for that, Kerry. Kerry is very important because she single-handedly, or with Bill Ryan, interviewed a lot of people who have gone down in the annals of history. And a lot of newbies will say, yeah, I've just interviewed X, or I've just interviewed Y. No, Kerry interviewed that person years and years ago. And that's why that's so important, because Kerry is not just an interviewer. Kerry has great psychic powers and is able to work and get the best out of people. So the reason I do this conference is as respect to Kerry, because she is a real powerhouse in this industry and can't be corrupted. So that's really good. So that's why I come here and do that. The Tina Bird, I've always said, there the grace of God go I, because the experiences that I've had are not typical to the vast majority of other experiences. And sometimes with those people who've had experiences, it's quite difficult, because my relationship or my interactions are remarkably different. And so I always say, whenever I can, to audiences, my experiences are not typical. Most people have very, very difficult interactions. And I miss Tina Bird, but I am aware of her. And I know that she would have given you some very hard-hitting facts and information, and as far as I'm concerned, she's truthful and that's accurate. It's just my story is remarkably different, but you should look on my story as not the run-of-the-mill. All right. So I've been going, well, I started in 2009, the end of 2009, when I sort of went onto the truthful land, and in another year it will be quite a bit of a celebration, really. And I made my mark for hopefully doing video or PowerPoint presentations, which I hope were interesting. I haven't done one today, mainly because at the moment I'm so involved with the RV. But once that's all completed and done, then when I come back to conferences, I'll do the visuals. However, what I'm prepared to do today is I'm going to do a talk, then I will address the RV for those of you who are interested, and you should be. And then I'll do a quick question and answer. So for my talk, what would you like me to talk about? Tell me what you want. I'll take a few people, yeah. Okay, fine. But that will just be the little end bit. For the main body of the talk, what do you want me to talk about?
Information. Alien-human interaction, and how it's hopefully going to be positive one day, somewhere. That'd be good.
Okay, I noticed the newspaper down here, and you've had that. Hello, Debs.
So, what's the soul connection with the alien and the soul, the spiritual connection? We hear about the physical experiences, but how is that affecting us on a soul level, spiritual level?
Do you mean for the average human person, or do you mean for those who've had interactions?
Well, for us in the world, at the moment, there seems to be this dichotomy between what's a good alien and what...
All right, okay. So what Debs is asking is about this thing about good aliens and bad aliens. Look, go on.
The
Fake alien invasion, okay. I'm sure Miles has touched on that, hasn't he? Didn't Miles talk about fake alien invasion? He must have done. Kerry, did he?
Not really.
Oh, Miles. All right, so look, well, I think you're saying you're interested in the alien stuff. I haven't really talked about my experiences for 5 or 6 years, simply because the Pentagon did not want me to be doing that while we're doing the RV work. It was seen as a distraction. But once the RV is, I like the hat, by the way, it was seen as a distraction, and once they've sorted out the potential of a fake alien invasion, and Kerry's very, very hot on that, then we can get back to where we need to be. But at the moment, it's not the theme that the White Hats want. The theme they wanted, and we'll talk about Stephen Greer in a minute, but you will have seen the Congress. So I have got a prize today. I always bring a prize. Those of you who have been and heard me before know that I always have a prize. I've got to give someone a €100 note. So if you get the question right, then you just come up and get yourself 100. It was at about £85, £86, I think, at a Bureau de Change. So that's the prize I'm giving away today. So those of you who, by the way, I didn't deliberately push this on my network, Kerry. I wanted basically Kerry's fans, who are sometimes CC fans, but I wanted that to be more. I didn't want too many CC people here because you're all going to ask me about the RV. How many people here from CC? Oh, bloody hell. Fine. Oh, well, it was a nice try. Okay, all right. All right, so look, what's CC? I'll tell you later. All right, so when I talked about 2009, when I went public, and being in the United Kingdom, my natural reaction was to go to what's called BUFOG. It was the British sort of equivalent of MUFON, to look at alien or UFOs and try to investigate it. But I soon found when I met them, they came to the house, that they just weren't interested at all. I don't even think they were part of a cover-up. I just actually think that they were just literally told just to take details and just put them in the bin. So I was very disappointed with that. And as I say, this is back in 2009. And so I then spoke to a few people and said, well, where else can you go? So MUFON is the Mutual UFO Network in the United States. And I was told, well, they generally just take people from America, Canada, and Mexico, but they do sometimes take people from elsewhere, so you can try. So I did do an email, and they're based in New York, so there's a 5-hour difference. And I basically said, you know, a few bits about myself. And I got an email back saying, we get lots of reports of objects in the sky, so we're not really interested. So I did some of what has now become my iconic drawings, and one day will be published in a book, and I sent them. And instead of having to wait 5 hours, within 3 minutes, there was a reply back saying, would you like to join MUFON? Within 3 minutes. So I said, yeah, that's fine. How long will it take? And the reply was, you've already joined. And literally on my email, this is 2010, all of what we take for normal now on a chat, but this is revolutionary, and not on a chat platform, into my emails. So literally, if you open your email, there was the chat with all of the members chatting and talking. So of course, MUFON was set up by the CIA, and it was set up to interact and understand genuine experiences and to get their information in a non-adversarial way, to be able to gain their trust and experience and to support them. I mean, let's be fair, although they've had their issues of late. But it soon became apparent that the attitude of the bosses towards me was quite, it was quite, not say difficult, we didn't know what to do with him. And after about 3 months, I left, and there was a petition from all the other users to get me back. And the guy, I think they call them chapters, or they're sort of semi-agencies, these MUFONs. And I remember him writing back saying, look, you know, Simon just needs to move on, and etc. So again, it was fascinating to be part of an organization which is supposed to be there to support you, but is playing a double game. It's there to understand and get as much information. And that was the point really where I thought what we need, not just in this country, but right across the world, I'm going to answer the CC question now, was an organization that helped support individuals, regardless of whether they'd seen a UFO, but people who were rejecting the matrix, people who wanted to be sovereign, people who didn't want to be pushed around anymore. You know, your brothers, your sisters, your family won't understand you, but maybe we can find a group across the world who will understand you, because their story is really challenging as well. And that's what I did, and that's what I set it out to be a worldwide organization. And that's what we actually achieved. And you know, whether that's what brought us to the attention of the White Hats or whether it was me, who knows. So let's talk about some UFO stuff, because I know you've asked about that. One of the key things that Kerry and I shared, with her interviewing whistleblowers and some of my experiences, allowed Kerry to think, oh yeah, I can get that. Because in 1971, I'd have been about 10 or 11 years old, when I had one of many experiences where my physical body remained on the ground, but the energy self was taken up into not a saucer craft, but a teardrop-shaped craft. And what I've always called the school in the air. But what others who've more experience on that call the school in space. And so I remember, and it is interesting because it's been about 6 years since I've talked about it, being on a craft and then a number of tables laid up against the wall. The tables didn't have legs, but they were solid and they were fixed into the side of the craft. But there were no legs holding it. So you could put, I guess, a ton weight on one end and it ought to cave in, but I bet it wouldn't. And on it, at the far end, were children, maybe ages 5 to 6. They're all girls. And then 4 or 5 tables, and then up in age range to about 10 or 11. And at the end of each table was not a clone, not a hybrid, but an ordinary human female, who we would today call a teaching assistant. So this was the person who was managing each table. And the group of kids on the right-hand side were 5 to 6 years old. And I'd arrived and been sort of dropped there, and then what we would call a prefect, but what she was called was the child with special ability. So she'd be like the head girl or the prefect, but that was her title, the child with special ability. So she came up to me and said, I'm to wait with you, you're going to be collected, you're not going to school, you're going up. So her job was just to wait with me until I was collected. So I asked the questions, and why are these kids, children, drawing with crayons, but all these other kids have these discs around their chest on what looked like a chain, and the disc was about the size of not a dinner plate, smaller than that, say a tea table, so about not that big, but fairly low down, so not on their chest, but just on their tummy. And these I later learnt were called PEDs, Personal Educated Device, PED, PED. And the kids on the low table, the youngsters, were with crayons and paper because they'd just come from school and they had not yet been introduced to the system, and so they were used to drawing with pens and paper. So that's what they did. They just sat on the table doing what they would do in the school. And then you move across the tables and the age range goes up, and what the kids were doing was holding this, I just call it a dinner plate, PED, no buttons on it, so you just hold it with your hands and your telepathic communication to it. And I asked, well, what do these things do? And this girl said to me, everything. So it was answering questions for them. It was also leading them, because it was like not an exam, but it was teaching them, and they would have to respond to it. But there was no button pressing. They would just hold it. And I think what was fascinating about that was that nobody was fearful. And often you hear about sleep paralysis, or you hear about people who are not in their right mind, or they're drugged. But that was not the case in this environment. And that's really important, because generally speaking, when there are alien abductions, the individual is in a different sort of mindset, a mind trance. It doesn't mean that they're out of it, it just means that they're not able to react perhaps as they would normally. But these kids were absolutely as if they've just come out of a school, and so much so that they were joking with the women who were at the end of the table. So the constant joke was not a PED, but a pet. Like you'd have a pet cat or a pet dog, and they would say, my pet is hungry. My pet wants to go for a walk. And they were just laughing, because they could see the joke between PED and pet. So it's not an instance where people were being held, these kids were being held against their will. this was an abduction, but it was one that most of them had had time and time again. They hadn't been tortured or hurt, and in fact they had learnt things. And so for them this was a really exciting environment. Now I don't know when they got back home whether they forgot everything. I don't know, but what I do know is that the kids I saw there were perfectly at ease. So I always call that, you know, the school in the air, because I knew it was off the ground, but I didn't appreciate it was in space. Of course, by that time it was in space. But Mary Rodwell and Kerry would know that that's the school in space, and that comes up time and time again. And I'm just going to give you lots of different bits, because that might, I think, keep it interesting, really. I remember a CIA guy phoning me at about 2010. How these people get hold of the phone numbers is, I give up worrying now. I just don't bother with it. And he introduced himself as an ex-CIA and said that his job, and this is where people perhaps get the wrong end of the stick, his job was to make the tin foil hats, right? Which of course is a joke, but it's not a joke, because in America most schools have at least one child who literally goes to school with one of these hats on. And he was chatting to me, and at the time I was a driving instructor, what the Americans call a driving teacher. And he said to me, oh, he said, oh yeah, we know a woman who gives driving lessons to alien, you know, alien group children, 16, 17, 18-year-olds, not clones, but hybrids. But she has to do it when we control her mind, literally sort of 2:30 in the morning. Now, be careful what you wish for, because I said to him, oh, I wouldn't need to be controlled to do that. I'd just do it during the day. And then 3 months later, I got a phone call, as I would, saying, like to have a driving lesson. I didn't think too much of it, get them all the time. Drove up to this woman. She looked physically odd. She looked odd. Her hair was like she'd had chemotherapy. Her hair was literally falling out. I put her age late 20s. I never met her before, and it was the first driving lesson, and she was awful, dreadful, bless her. And she just turned to me and said, do you know Dr. Stephen Greer? So I said, no, I've never met him, but I have heard of him. So instead of talking about, you know, do I turn left here, do I turn right here, that's what our topic was. In the end, she said, can you drop me at the co-op? This is in Whitby. You drop me at the co-op, I want to do a bit of shopping. So fine, I did it. And this is the point where it's customary for the pupil to pay the teacher. So I sort of sat there, and she sat there, and nothing happened. So I obviously worked out who she was and what was going on. So I got out of the car. She got out of the car and just stood there smiling at me. So I said, well, it's introductory, £15 for first lesson. So she handed me a £5 note. So I took it and thanked her, because people who are on a program of training have no concept of money. Okay, they don't understand money. So literally I had spoken to somebody and made that quip, that throwaway comment, which was, oh, I wouldn't need to be drugged to go and give a, you know, someone a driving lesson like that. I'll do it, you know. And 3 months later, that's exactly what was achieved. So what it does is it makes you aware of how closely you're being monitored, but not necessarily in terms of being followed or spied in a very difficult way, but in terms of an interaction way. And that's something. And another experience on an underground facility where it's very rough-hewn carved walls, circular, and then on the sides are tables, and at each table maybe 5 or 6 you know, alien, not children, but I would say around the 20 to 30-year-old. And each table had a guy in a white coat. Why doctors and scientists and professors have to wear white coats to prove who they are, I really don't know. But it's not a joke. They literally were, every one table there was a guy with a white coat. Now in the middle of the room was a big circle in paint, what looked like paint. And remember, everything is run by the Americans. Nothing is run by anybody else. Always remember that. And on the outside of it was said kindergarten. Was it do not enter, do not cross, do not approach? That's it. Do not approach. Do not approach. So a big circle, half the size of this room, with the words kindergarten written all around it, and do not approach. And in it were, I'd say these kids were between, I don't know, 1 year and 2 years old. And most of them were actually crawling. And in it were what the Americans call a mantis, we call a mantid. There was a doctor, alien doctor, and one of the guys with the purple robe, so we'd call him a universal master. And the job was he was dropping a rubber ball, bouncing. And the job of the young kids was to try to stop the ball bouncing with their mind. So that's what was going on. And I forgot to mention there were 2 reptilian guards either side of the door. It was just very interesting, the relationship, and this is what Kerry's really into perhaps, between humans and aliens. The bit that's really secret, the work that is undertaken and going on. Now, who's in charge at that stage, I wouldn't know. But it was a program that was clearly worked. And in the corner, there was an issue. There was a guy in the white coat teaching these alien groups how to work a coffee grinder. Literally, I mean, that they have to be taught and trained. So he was teaching them how to use, and he got, a lot of people can't do this sort of work. They emotionally break down, they have a collapse. It's incredibly stressful for most humans to have to work in an environment like that where you can't tell anyone about it. You can't go home and tell your friends, hey, listen, this is what I do today. You can't do that because you'll be found dead on a railroad line. So a lot of them, they literally can't cope with it, and he had a breakdown, and he started to shout at the alien group, and one of the reptilians moved. I've never seen anything move so fast. Huge strides, and you know, it really was, as it ran across, and just grabbed him and pushed him up against the wall. Didn't kill him, but you know, it was a close thing, because what humans are not allowed to do is not allowed to physically touch any of them. And it was immediate death to go into this circle area, which was a creche, a kindergarten. Any human went into that, is death, because what's going on there is an experiment which humans were not allowed to be involved in. And that was literally happening in an underground base near you. So it wasn't child abduction what was going on here. It was integration of half human, half alien into our society, so that when they went out, they at least had some concept of how to work a phone, how to do this, how to do that. And that's what that young woman was in the car with me, learning to drive. And yet I'd been privileged, and I take that word, been privileged for that to be arranged. And I never heard from her again. And what I actually did do was go back to the house. It was about 6 miles from where I lived, and it was all boarded up. So I knocked on the 2 neighbours' door. One wasn't in, but the other one is, and said, no, it's a council house. No one's lived here for over a year. And yet I saw this woman walk out of this place. Because whenever I took a booking, I had to know where someone lived, so they had to give me their name and details. But that was it. That was all about me spending 1 hour with this person, and then I'll never see them again. The amount of money that has been spent on these secret projects, I just can't imagine it. It isn't just about, you know, weapons or airplanes. It's all of the effort they make to keep these beings out of the public eye. All the issues that happen, they have to go and clear up and do the work. It's just huge amounts of money. So when I look back on the history I've had, and Kerry alluded to, my mother, of course, worked for what we colloquially call MI5, and what we call the MI6, but really Britain has a police force which we call MI5, but we don't call it a secret, because M stands for ministry, not military, by the way. Its job is within the homeland of the United Kingdom, so therefore it doesn't need to be secret. MI6 is operating outside and shouldn't be operating outside. So that is the Secret Intelligence Service. MI6 is professionally called the Secret Intelligence Service. MI5 is called the Domestic Service. That's the two key terms. So my mother worked for MI5, the Domestic Service, but really, of course, she was working for America, the National Security Agency. And my grandfather, who Kerry referred to there, working for MI6, was really working for the CIA. So what Kerry's trying to say is that in my life, I've had two choices, the choice of good and the choice of evil. And I remember talking to an alien creature, which again, Americans would call mantis, and we would call mantid. And I was asked to make a choice. How old would I be? 8, 9, something like that. And it was the sword of the reptilian or the purple robe of the mantid. And I had to touch which one I wanted to be guided by. So I touched the purple robe of the mantid, not the reptilian. And as we walked away, remember you don't talk with your mouth when you're dealing with these beings. It's all here. And you can send colours, you can send images, and you can send words. But their names, they have names I can't pronounce. And reptilians really get cross if you attempt to pronounce their names incorrectly. So it's best not to. And they'll give you nicknames because they know humans can't pronounce their names, and it will just make them literally want to pull people's arms off. So that's what reptilians are like. You've got to be very careful. And I remember saying to the being, did you know that I would choose you? And he said to me, if you have eyes to see and ears to hear, you will know I would know that that's what you were going to choose. So had I gone the other way, then I guess I would have been what you would call a cabal person. But I didn't. I went the other way, and that's why the white hats work with me. It's as simple as that. You make a choice, and as long as you stick to that choice and you're tested, and hey, we're all tested, and I get tested. I went to a conference, not conference, I met Kerry in, was it January? In January when she came over and went and met her in a pub. And I just went to the loo and somebody came up and offered me a considerable amount of money to buy Connecting Consciousness. That's not the first time. Okay, I do get offered things if I walk away from it or this, that and the other. And when we had our conversations with the White Hats, and I'm working out the arrangements, which is basically to fund CC, they'll fund it for 10 years. The deal was, but you can't retire. You can't walk away. We are not going to put all this money into your organization if you're just going to walk away from it. And I said, no, it's not my intention to do that, but I do want to let go of the day-to-day running and have that. So I want to do more strategic stuff. And they were very, very clear with that. So the choices I've made, the family members I've been with, the experiences I've had have all led to where we are now. All of us, because you're all here. So you've all seen the truth, you all know the truth, and you've understood enough to be able to break free from the matrix. In my case, for whatever reason, the way I have been treated is remarkably different from most cases of being treated. It is not usual for an individual to be abducted and then given free roam. Kerry's got some people she's met and questioned on that, to have a conversation and have your questions answered. For instance, I've asked them, why is it when you abduct people, with the greys I'm talking about, the small greys and the taller greys, why don't the greys talk to the people they're abducting? I've said half of the terror is the fact that the greys don't communicate. And I was met with a real shock, which was, well, they're not supposed to remember. I said, but they are remembering. You're doing all these things to them. You don't bother to communicate with them because as far as you're concerned, their mind's going to be wiped. So when they go back, they don't have any knowledge. But it's not working. A lot of them are breaking through. And that was quite a shock to them. And I, grace of God, have not been in that experience. I'm sure there have been genetic experiments done to me. Talk about the hybrid that I gave the driving lesson to. The best way I describe it is, think of this as an arrow. That's 0, that's 6, and that's 12. And that's your physical body, okay? If the arrow's on 0, you're sitting on the sofa, eating potato chips, watching television. That's how human you are. If you're over at 12, you're flying alien spacecraft. But unfortunately, the more you push the body towards 11 and 12, 10, 11 and 12, the more the genetic features in the face become so non-human that everyone will cross the sidewalk, they don't want to see you. So you can't interact. So your body has to take a different sort of soul than is current on the third dimensional world. Many of you don't have third dimensional souls. Many of you have higher dimensional souls. The more that this soul vibrates, the more likely it is to smash your body to pieces. If you're in a third dimensional body, arbitrarily, it will vibrate like that. But if your soul is different, it's like that. How can you put that into a body like that? So you have to alter the genetics of the body to bring up that frequency so that one will not reject the other. That's really important. And when they get it wrong, then there are all sorts of issues. And I remember meeting a contractor to the National Security Agency who met me, and he said, quote, "Somebody has taken a lot of trouble with you. Basically, they've tried to get you as compatible as possible." Lots of cases, and Kerry will be aware of them, where children as young as 4 or 5 have got no toes or fingers missing. And they've said, quote, "Oh, they got the blueprint wrong." Language that they should have no understanding of at that age. Or children that stand and point at the stars and say, "That's where I live." And it gets knocked out of most of us. And I think what helped me greatly was that I had one experience, the same one, with the teardrop craft, where I'm in what we would call the pilot's chair, and I've got aliens this side of me and all the alien technology, and on this side, again, guys in white coats operating machines which I now know to be IBM machines with the great tape spools moving, and on this side cables as thick as an elephant's trunk running all down the floor, but on this side nothing. And I could even smell the heat from the machines and the fans going. We're talking 1971, okay? And the fans turning and the smell of hot metal. But over this side, there's nothing. It's really interesting. And some of the comments were, the lead scientist or doctor, don't know to this day who it was, said, something, 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 we've got 50 years, we better get it right. And on my 50th birthday, not only did these memories come back, not as dreams, but during the day, but they came back in order. So literally there was a message there which, had it come back higgledy-piggledy, it would have been very difficult to have worked it out, but it came back in order. So from a small child right up, and the messages, when put together, actually showed me what my role was and what their interest in me was. And for me, this, one of the saddest, and Becky knows this, one of the saddest things is that you here know the truth, but all of the masses of ordinary people have no clue, and it's always the same. Normally the elite know and the unelite don't know, but you've broken free of that. So we did with Miles 2015, that conference with Miles in Salisbury, 2014, and I'd just come out and done the talk, and a guy came up and said, I want to buy you lunch. Well, we know in Britain that doesn't mean what it means, does it? So he said, you know, I'm a lord. I'm not really a lord. He said, my masters have paid that title so that I can literally hold my own in any meeting. But I've been sent to talk to you. And he said, I've waited for you to do your conference. And he said to me, you know, he said, you come across my radar because my bosses have told me to speak to you, and I have messages for you. And he said the message is that they believe everything you say. And that was quite a shock, because the old story is, here are the Freemasons know everything, but the ordinary people don't know anything. Oh, he was Knights Templars, by the way. He didn't never told me that, just don't want to get him in trouble, but it was just obvious. And he said, I've been sent to make you an offer, and I think those of you who've listened to me long enough will know what that offer was. Who knows what that offer was? Fantastic. That isn't what the prize is. So yeah, the offer was, we're going to offer you bullet-resistant vehicles, armed guards, and if the world goes to shit, you've got a underground base in Salisbury for you and your loved ones. And he said, that's for you whether you want it or not. He said, but I have got a question, and you don't have to answer it. And he asked me the question, and the question was, when you're on one of their, not one of ours, when you're on one of their spaceships and you are seeing the future, do you see it as a video playing out, or do you see it as individual pictures? Now this is a trick question, because what he's trying to ask me is, am I accessing the Akashic? Am I accessing my own Akashic? Or am I doing something a bit more than that and actually seeing the future? So I said, I see both. I can see the individual pictures in black and white, or I can see the video play out in colour. And he made a note of that, and that was that. So all sides have been interested in my story, but predominantly the good side made a step forward to be more supportive. And again, the guy who was a contractor to the NSA said to me, because I came from Brighton, and there's some characters who also went to Brighton around the same time, who tragically either committed suicide because they went to Tavistock Institute. Brighton General Hospital had an element of Tavistock at that time there. And Orlando Bloom, of course, went to Brighton after me, but he was destined not to be a super soldier, he was destined to be a Hollywood superstar, whereas, what's the guy's name? Spears, yeah, Max Spears. Number of them also went to Brighton. And my first time was in Hove, which is about, I don't know, 12 miles, 6 miles from Brighton, and that was a MI5 safe house. So my mother and I lived there, and then we moved into Brighton proper. And the contractor for the National Security Agency said to me, he said, the alien I would refer to as Mum, those of you who remember, but although he was a male, that's what he wanted to be known as. He said, well, Mum will never let them do anything like that to you. So they have to be incredibly careful with you. And I think that there's some truth in that. That's why I'm still here, not been taken out. So when I look at those experiences that I've had, and I'll never become, hopefully never become big-headed or this, that, and the other, just always remember that these beings have their own agenda, and whoever on the human side is working is having to play a very tricky double game. And remember, the United States Navy deals in one group, the United States Air Force deals in another group, the Army deal in another group. Then you've got all the secret intelligence agencies working with and against the military. So there are a plethora of different alien groups, ostensibly working with humans, but for their own agenda, and to work against not just another alien group, but against their own group within their own group. Oh, it's very Machiavellian, and I don't join the bandwagon to attack certain presidents who, quote, sold out humanity. I know that what they had to do was play for time. They did not, in the 1940s and 1950s and the 60s, they did not have the technology to at least put up a half-decent fight. So what they did was what perhaps they could only do, which was go along with things and play for time, back engineer as much stuff as they could. And then it was under Ronald Reagan that finally the software of the computer systems caught up with the hardware. The problem had been not laser beams, so we just used the word laser beams. That had never been the problem. The problem was, how do you target it? How do you predict where something traveling at 186,000 miles a second will be in 3 seconds' time? And the software just did not exist on this planet. But under Ronald Reagan's time as president, it did. So that's why he coined the phrase Star Wars, because it was now felt that America could engage on a half-decent level, not equal, but a half-decent level. And a number of alien spacecraft have been brought down by these weapons. You know, there's one of you, I think it was on Saturday, you had a really interesting lady have a talk about her experience in Wales, I think. Anybody here yesterday with that? Okay, well, I'd met a guy who had met the Freemason, the Masonic sheriff, yeah, in that part of Wales, and he said, "Do you want to see a bit of molten spacecraft?" So he handed me a piece of molten craft. That's what was brought down, and he got a tour and all the rest of it. And he was offered to join the Templars, and he did join the Templars. And yeah, so that again, your speaker there is absolutely truthful. There was, and there has been a number of craft. In fact, the one that was brought down by a portable energy weapon. Even back then, we're talking a few years ago, they were portable. You could actually take it on the back of a truck or a military vehicle. The question was, the alien craft had to be very close, because aliens read humans' mind. And if you're not able to block your mind, when the command is given to fire, if they're 70,000 miles or 40,000 miles up on the atmosphere, they'll hear you say fire. So they'll move their craft, and they can move so quickly that by the time the button is pressed, we still press buttons here, the energy jet goes up, it misses. But if it's 200 feet or 300 feet above the ground, they've got no time to react. So what they did was they would discharge very, very small neutron-type bombs. This is the British Army, small neutron-type bombs, because radioactive energy, even when it's in a neutron, which doesn't produce harmful radiation waves, affects the navigation system of a number of alien spacecraft. Alien spacecraft navigate with crystals. Okay, for the front of the craft, or if it's a circle, a disc, it uses quartz, a type of quartz crystal. That actually is part of the navigation system. And it's not so much the ability to fly the craft, it's the navigation. And so you get about 10 seconds or 20 seconds where the alien craft is flying blind. So what they would do is they use mortars, literally. You could do it in Wales because there were no communities about. You can't do it in London. So because it was devoid of a lot of people, they would then fire these neutrons in a mortar. It would go up, explode. This craft's 300 feet up. 10 seconds of window of action, then they would use the weapon. And it worked. So that was back then, and now the science has moved on greatly, so that weapons now can go through. Remember, through the atmosphere was a real problem. Firing an energy weapon through an oxygen atmosphere would actually make the beam slightly change course in the early days. So Reagan was the guy at the helm of that, and whatever you might think about Reagan, he actually did push that through. So he was actually a good guy, because he ensured that Britain, that the world had some sort of defence. Is any of this interesting? Is this all right? Is it? Okay, right. Okay. So my experience is, I'll take questions at the end. I won't do it now. I'll give you a question and answer at the end. So my experiences have been different. And it is difficult, because I remember being on a radio show, and there was another guy from MUFON who then just alive turned on me. You know, why are you different? You know, I've had terrible experiences. And I said, well, I know you have. I'm not here to saying you're not. I'm just giving my own experience, my own truth. And there's an awful lot of people who want everyone to have had the same experience. Right? And I'm, for one, will stand here publicly and say the majority of aliens don't like humans. The majority of aliens tolerate humanity. There is a perception that absolutely wants to see us gone. And then on the other spectrum, there's a small group that actually wants us to be successful and thrive. But it is very dangerous for anybody to say the good alien's this and the good alien's that. It's extremely, extremely foolish to do that. And only people who have really had the experiences can stand before you and say, you know, we do have to be careful with this. It's not all about that. So Dr. Stephen Greer came round nicely to that. I think it was it the 90s, Kerry? He did that Congress in the 90s? He got all them together, didn't he? 100 people? Okay, but there was a big one with the staff sergeant, who I know. Stone. Okay, so that one was interesting because then the Black Hats controlled Congress. And it's very, very dangerous when a Black Hat operation to bring lots of good, truthful, genuine experiences in together. The CIA spends a lot of its money going from one location to another, checking up on genuine experiences. But if it's a Black Hat operation, to bring a lot of genuine people together is great for the CIA because they don't have to work too hard. It's everyone's in one room. But what we saw recently, the White Hats control, by and large, the Congress. And that's why this time it wasn't about experiencers saying what they'd experienced. It was about ex-intelligence officers saying what had been reported to them and what perhaps they might have seen themselves. So that is not part of the fake alien agenda, the invasion. That is the good guys moving towards that. What you've got today in some of the newspapers, that is part of the fake alien. So you've got two groups now. You've got the cabal trying to push a fake alien agenda, and you've got the good guys who are saying we do want disclosure, but we don't want it as a means to control humanity. So that's what's taking place, and the media is, you'll soon see which newspapers are going down which end and which TV station is controlled by what, who, where and when. Right, time to give away a prize. It's a bit unfair because those of you who perhaps new to listening to me won't really have that knowledge, but there you go. Right, on that teardrop spacecraft, an alien that I call Mum, Mantid Mantis, puts its two hands on my shoulder and says what to me? Makes what's called a deal. What's the deal? Who can say it? Looks like I'm going home with €100. Is it because you don't remember because it's been 6 years ago and you've forgotten? Because it's all about Trump and this, that and the other and we've just forgotten about it? Or did you not ever catch that one? Tell me. Didn't catch it. Okay, all right. Well, it horrifies a lot of people who don't understand. And when you make an arrangement, it's what is the wording? Because are they there to trick you? I met lots of people who made agreements and then said to me afterwards, I was tricked. I was a fool. There was one guy who, I will come back to it, but I'll just say this one guy who was, as he stood there with an alien, the alien put a vision in his head. He was like a knight at a table with a goblet of wine and a sword. And he thought, this is great. I'm going to be a king or I'm going to be a knight. And then he wanted a deal. He took the deal. And then he was taken off this world and put into battle, as lots of humans are. So there's a super soldier, but that's the military super soldier. Forget about that. That's a super soldier that the public understand. There's another super soldier. And they're the ones that can be brought back from the dead, although their physical bodies show the scars. And he was tricked into that and couldn't work out how to get out of it. The mind wasn't like that, thank the Lord. That's why I say, they're the grace of God. So the wording was, the alien said to me, quote, would you like to be like us, to have knowledge and understanding, to know the past and see the future? That's what I was offered. And I said yes. And I was also shown, if I at any point wanted to break that, how to do it. I haven't broken it yet because that hasn't negatively impacted humanity. It hasn't negatively impacted me. And it's taken me on elements of experiences that I could only talk to Kerry, that's my choice, because I wouldn't feel comfortable in talking to a wider audience, because it is too shocking, not because it's nobody lost their lives or bad, but the concept is such. And I will do a book at some point when I retire, and it will level it. And there'll be an awful lot of people who will not accept it. They will say, no, he's just wants the limelight. He just wants the spotlight. He's just making it all up. It's not real. It couldn't happen. That's their choice. But the weird out there is weirder than even a lot of researchers know. And I'm here today because Kerry knows. There's only a handful, in my opinion, of men and women on this planet who have the knowledge without going mad. And Kerry's one of them. That's why I make it. I didn't make it last year, but that was because the RV was really, there's a lot going on then. It's very important that I support Kerry because she's 1 in a million. And I'm sure that when things happen and work out, Kerry will get support in a way that she doesn't actually imagine. So, all right. I'm happy to quickly take any questions. I can do the RV, but I'll just do question and answers. I'm not going to keep moving back with the mic, so can you shout?
Simon, when you get weird coincidences in life, like things like impacting you again and again within a short cluster, would you say it's ET doing that? Do you think it's the universe and God doing that, or is that our higher selves doing that to show us something?
I'm not copping out of your question. It can be all three. Sometimes even working together in conjunction. The key is not what you're presented with, but what do you do with it? Plenty of people who have lots of signs laid before them and don't act on it. That might be the only chance they ever get. They've blown it. And if you have anything that you feel is that way inclined, do not dismiss it. You must act on it for good, because if you do, you'll get another one and another one and another one. But if you block it, why would they bother with you? So it can be all of those things, either individually or working together. Remember, it can be evil as well, because evil can put a trap or a trick in your place, and you've got to then look into yourself and say, does this look real or genuine? Okay, but evil loves certain aspects. It's a very dense, heavy energy, and they're not clever, because remember, evil can't create, it can only replicate. So you could tell with a bit of practice something that is just coming from a very low vibration. Okay, next question.
Can I ask you a question? You speak about you have an awareness of the future and the past, and you created connecting consciousness, and everyone here has that element of consciousness. Why would we want to try and share that experience with people? I mean, within your higher self, you would know possibly who could cope with that awareness and how they could project within a small group to go forwards and help others.
I created plan 1 and plan 2. Plan 1 was literally to create an energy organization. That's why, you don't pay a membership fee. If you're a member of CC, you don't pay me anything. It's free to join. It's not a money-making scam. It's your free choice. And white hats really love that. They see that it's not about making money. So that was phase 1. Phase 2, we're on a physical world. I have to take this organization and produce or provide physical aspects. So that's why we're going down the project route. So the American military will fund Connecting Consciousness. They asked me, how many members do you have? We've got 116,000. So 116,000 members of Connecting Consciousness across the earth. I was asked, what's your figures? And the reply was, well, we can fund 115,000 projects. So the second phase is literally all those members who've submitted projects, and Carol's here today. She's holding those projects. You don't have to have a Zim note. You don't have to have any Iraqi Dina. That's not required. And what will happen is that I will get a call at some point soon and said, okay, let's have 15 projects for England. Let's have 5 projects for Scotland. Let's have 10 projects for Zimbabwe or Massachusetts or wherever it is. And you've got 2 days to do it. And that's why we'll have to move. And that will all be funded and paid for. So the point is, I'm not seeking to sit on top of a mountain and preach to people. What I'm seeking to do is to create an organization where people have sovereignty and can turn their back on the matrix, but need support because we need money. You have to pay your rent or your mortgage or whatever it is. So if you run a project, you will receive a wage for running that project. What a fantastic way to elevate good people into a position around the world where they can manage a project which brings benefit to humanity, and they and their families are rewarded for doing it. Also, there will be members of CC who want to be project managers, manage those projects. There are so many opportunities. And so in terms of, if I understand the question correctly, I don't choose to tell some people some things about my own experiences, because outside of this hall of understanding, there is a mass of ineptitude and bigotry. So if I told you something about, these things happened, you think, oh, that's cool. But then you get the local newspapers. Nobody from the BBC wants to interview me anymore because they can't win. I know that because the BBC said to me, we've been told not to interview you because we can't make a fool of you. Well, I've actually said that. That's why I don't have the interviews, because they don't want to talk to me, because they can't belittle me. I remember one guy saying to me, nobody in 10 years I've done this radio show has ever spoken to me like you do, live. And I just said to him, well, maybe it's time that happened. And the other thing is that you must never lose your temper with them. As soon as you lose your temper and get cross or get on your high horse or indignant, they love it. So you just make them look a fool. And so it's a great badge of honour that the BBC are under orders not to interview me because they can't get the better of me. So that's interesting. Another question.
Yes. Why is Earth so important that all these different alien races are here to do something?
It's a great question. Because our lifespans, all of us, whether you're an ant or a human, is so small, artificially small. Kerry will tell you all about that, artificially reduced. But it means that we respond dramatically. If you were to live for 2,000 or 4,000 years, your evolutionary change physically would be quite slow. But if you are supposed to live for 100 years on this planet, you change dramatically. So the actual insects, the animal life, us, we are fascinating to study because we respond so quickly. That's one aspect. The second aspect is the planet is very, very special. I love the Bible, but there are some aspects of it that aren't quite accurate about how everything was created and seeded on the planet, but I'm not going to do that at the moment. But we have a situation where there are some aliens that are connected to the Earth history-wise and connected through DNA to the human race here. So there are some aliens who have attempted to, we call them alliance, who've tended to walk away but can't and have to do it. The second, perhaps most important, is artificial intelligence. That AI, the evil AI, mustn't be dominant on Earth, because if it wins here, it will go everywhere. And even what I would call the aliens that sit on the fence know that they will be destroyed by this evil AI. So it's in their interest to quarantine the Earth and attempt to destroy this. So AI is perhaps a greater enemy than the reptilians, because the reptilians are in their own way fighting. Perhaps we could call it their own AI. I can't be sure of that, but you program something in another dimension and you put your aspect into it. Here on this Earth, if a great chess master gets someone to program a computer, it doesn't have that connection. It just has the answers, and we do this and then we do that. But outside of this realm, you put your essence into it. So that AI was already aggressive and wanted to conquer and control. So, next question.
Hi. We are a food source and energy source for the reptilians, the Draco reptilians. And so I have trouble understanding why they don't want us on the planet. Could you elaborate?
I didn't say they don't want us on the planet. They would like to remove a certain portion of us. It's a little bit like a big supermarket. The head of that supermarket might say, I think we should reduce the human population by 75%. Okay, you do that. Let's see your cash registers take any money. That is one of the big reasons that agenda has not been put into place, because the big corporations love our money. And if you were to reduce the human population by a staggering number, all of their best pals right across the are not going to make any money. And that's the world. So that's another battle going on. At the operational level to answer your question, at the operational level, there is no difference. We perhaps going into realms which are a bit difficult for some people, and we passed it today. There is no difference between a human farm with sheep or cows and the earth. The question is, does anybody really have a knowledge of what's going on? Do the sheep know? I bet they do know where they're going. I bet the cows know. And what the farmer does is it doesn't kill all his animals off, because he'll have no animals to take to the supermarket next year. So it's done, it's managed, it's controlled. What I'm talking about more as demonic type forces which are deeply rooted in half human, half non-human masters of this earth, evil people who believe themselves to be God Almighty, and therefore they have the right to do what they do. So it's a different group from the reptilians. They may pay homage to them, but they are running their own agenda. That's what I meant, it's Machiavellian. You could have a book with 50 different agendas running. It's a good question. I don't think I've answered it as well as I could have done if I had more time. Question over the back, because you're getting frustrated because I'm all choosing people down here. Too late.
Simon, you as an individual and your group, did you say 116,000?
116,000.
Are you and group promoting two things? And it's not a program. It's an EBS alert and the GASARA treaty and the Gold Back Standard treaty, which connects to it.
Right, it doesn't connect to it. That's disinformation. I'm not promoting the EBS. I am promoting the Goldback, NASARA, GASARA. They're not connected. The latest intel coming out from the intel boards is that they have been connected. Why would you need to connect EBS? Why would you need to connect the EBS with it? So it's a very difficult road, and I've been as clear as I can after the last 2 years that I would not be surprised if a city like London had some form of emergency alert. That wouldn't surprise me. They're not going to say to you, the soldiers are in the streets to do this, that and the other. What they'll say to you is, we found a Second World War bomb. If you live in this postcode and this postcode, don't come out of your house for the next 6 hours. If you're on your way home, you have 2 hours to get home, otherwise book into a hotel. So I'm quite happy to accept that in this country or America, we would call it counties in America, county level, an emergency alert can be activated, but not right across the globe, as is said. I also don't go with the stock market crash as it's being reported. I don't go with the banking crash as is being reported. And the EBS does exist, but it is not going to happen in the way it's put forward. The Pentagon have actually been leaning on a number of commentators, not me. I wouldn't be here today if I'd been lent on. I really wouldn't. And remember, I've got 4 NDAs. non-circumventing, non-disclosure agreements which I've signed with them, which tells me what I can talk about and what I can't talk about. So when somebody is telling you stuff, just ask them if they've got an NDA. Ask them if they have an NDA. So what I'm saying is that the stock market has been in free fall since the day that Donald Trump left office. But it's been managed in such a way that it doesn't appear to be a crash. If you've got the right software, go back over the last 3 or 4 years and look at what the stock market was when Trump was in office and look where it is now. That's a crash, but it's been done so cleverly and so gently that ordinary people don't recognize it. The banks, look at the 2 major banks. Why did those Credit Suisse and that, why did they crash? The banks crashed because they were not supported by NASARA, GASARA. What the good guys did was fly plane loads of gold to every central bank that they wanted to save, and those banks they didn't could not be Basel 3/4 compliant. So when they were audited, they did not have the resources to back the amount of paper money they had. That's why they collapsed. Remember, HSBC is a lead player for NASARA GASARA. That's why in Great Britain, HSBC took over part of the failed bank. What a surprise. So we fully know what NASARA GASARA is. We're involved in it in our own humble way. But we're very cautious about saying to people, there's going to be a massive crash. The number of people who wrote into me and said, thank you for telling us to store food and water, because when COVID hit and the supermarkets ran out, I listened to you and I had 3 weeks worth of food and stuff. So I'd done my job. 2 years before COVID, I said to people, you'll need 4 weeks of food, water, pet food, etc., etc. And for a lot of people, I didn't talk about loo rolls. I didn't. I generally didn't. If I'd done, I would have said it. But I did say food and water and things like that, and have some cash, etc. And that's what those members of CC who listened to me had. They had a store of food. So when they went to the local supermarket and there was no bread, they had something else. And that's what we did. Next question. Debs.
Are we going to see notes from the King's Head on?
Right, so the question is, will British money have a King's Head on it? I'm expecting the King to abdicate fairly soon. And the difficulty, when let's say you buy something, I am answering the question, Debs, when you buy something in a store, you put a debit card in, under the system now, it's tokens, gold-backed tokens, but because we're still in a fiat environment, they're having to be converted back to fiat to convert with your bank. All right, that's the situation. So when that no longer is the case, so you put your card in, it's £15, that's 15 tokens, and that is compatible with the system in the bank. We are off the SWIFT system now, they're running in duality. Then there's no need to have King's Head. I'd love to see things like Stonehenge on there. That's what I want. I don't want to see Wren's Church or St Paul's Cathedral or some scientist. I think, look at the history of this country, look at the history of Wales and Scotland and Ireland, and draw things from their history and place that on there. So I'm looking for him to abdicate. Remember, the deal done with the Queen was not only would the Queen be revered, but the family and the concept of the royal line. So Nostradamus said that Charles would be the last king. Remember, he wrote, what did he write, 300-400 years ago, 500 years ago? So he's on record, and you can buy a book for a couple of quid. It says it, Charles will be the last king of England. Next question. Hiya.
I know that you're from Rhodesia, and I was born there too. And you sort of indicated that there's a special place or role for Rhodesia, Zimbabwe to play, and I just wondered if you could elaborate on that a little bit more.
Okay, so the country is now called Zimbabwe. When I was born there in 1959, it was called Rhodesia. I left as a very young baby. I was only 6 months old. But I am a British subject because it was part of the Commonwealth at the time. There is more resources in the ground of Zimbabwe than every other country in the world put together, where they just haven't been accessed yet. And so, quite rightly, African leaders are very cautious of the white man turning up and saying, oh, we've got a deal for you. You know, I'll give you this bowl of plastic beads, and you give me this boring yellow stuff, which we call gold. Well, those days are gone. So, as part of the concept 2008, the special Zimbabwe notes, or you might refer to them as bonds, were created. They were not created for currency. This is all part, right back 2008, was part of what is rolling out now. So 2 countries really stand out. One is Rhodesia / Zimbabwe and Iraq. These are the 2 countries that have predominantly had evil placed upon them. They're not exclusive. There are lots of other countries that have. So when these 2008 blue trillion notes were created, they were created just for humanitarian projects. What they did then is playing out now, but unfortunately what happened was that the Colombian mafioso stole the printing press and the plates from Zimbabwe and started printing loads and loads of notes for themselves. Fortunately, the serial numbers are known, so they're not going to go anywhere. This is the point. Average people had no clue, but back 2008, 9 and 10, the Colombian mafia knew exactly what was playing out and wanted those plates so they could produce these notes, so they would then, what we call the redemption. There are container loads of Iraqi dinar waiting to be redeemed, container loads of Zim notes waiting to be redeemed. But no notes are going to be redeemed unless there is a true provenance. How do we know that it's not got child trafficking with it? How do we know it's not been drug running money? We don't. So the good guys are not going to touch anything that they cannot be assured is pristine and has no evil to it. So Zimbabwe will have, energy-wise, a greater role to play than South Africa. South Africa will play a very big role politically in Africa, but Zimbabwe will play a very key role in pulling all of Africa out of the difficulty. So there are plans to put railway lines through 5 countries of Africa on the west coast. There are plans to build a port in East Africa that will rival the biggest Chinese port. All these plans will come from GASARA, NASARA monies and part of the RV. And we, Connecting Consciousness, will play our part because we will connect with local communities, leaders, but not corrupt leaders. Want to talk to local people and put projects in that are not just done for the television and not just here for 1 year, and then when the cameras have gone, the money runs out and the people are thrown back worse than they were. So we are talking long-term projects and long-term support. And that's what I believe in. Next question. Hi.
Xi Jinping, is he bad? You know, the communist.
So the question is the relationship with Xi Jinping. No, Xi Jinping is not bad. Xi Jinping is a card holder of the Communist Party. You have to be, otherwise you can't be a politician. But he's working with the Chinese elders, both the red dragons and the white dragons, to take the head off the communist snake. So Xi Jinping works with the Chinese elders and works very closely with Trump, very closely with Modi, very closely with Putin. Next question.
I have an understanding, I might be wrong, but GASARA means that people are going to get less off their debts and things. How does that compare with the interest rates going up, you know, beyond 5% at the moment? How is this?
Because we're not in NASARA GASARA, we're in the old paradigm. I think the key here is nobody officially is going to be told until it can't be stopped. It would be lovely to shout from the hilltops and say this, that and the other, we're putting this in place. But until you control the system, there is always a possibility that the system will try and, like the Matrix, at the very end of that film, the Matrix just regenerated itself and carried on. So Neo wasn't the great saviour for the Matrix. It was just another one of the anomalies, although a special anomaly. So what they've learnt basically is that all of the bureaucracy has to be controlled before things happen. So we want to move away from VAT, we want to move away from income tax. The plan is no income tax, no value-added tax. There will be a flat rate tax on new products only. So if you buy a house from a builder, it's brand new, you will pay a tax on it, but if you then sell that house to somebody, they don't pay a tax on it. Food will not be taxed. Medicines, traditional pharmaceutical medicines, will not be taxed. And I think Becky and I, lots of things annoy us, but one of the greatest things that annoy me is looking at holes in roads, street lights that don't work, nurses, good nurses, they're not always good, there are some naughty nurses, but good nurses, unfortunately, can't get a sort of a pay rise, can't get the equipment, not enough of this, not enough school teachers, etc., right across the board. And then they say, we found $1 million. And everyone's really excited about it. Oh, wonderful, found $1 million. Found $1 million. I can tell you, without breaking any of my NDAs, that there are individuals who have what we call golden camels. Now, I thought a golden camel, didn't I? I thought a golden camel was like that, 24 karat gold. No, golden camel is a 5-foot solid gold camel. And there are hundreds of them. And that's not actually worth anything. What's worth it is the boxes that they stand on. Chinese scrolls that go back 2,000–3,000 years old. The amount of money that's really on the earth is beyond most people's initial comprehension. It is a complete game that's being played with people. Oh, we found an extra $1 million for the NHS. We found an extra this. Well, we can't really give you this because of that. It's all bullshit. There's absolutely trillions about Zimbabwe. Trillions. But we're only people and we don't matter. This is the game that's being played. So what's happening is a big change coming, and you can't necessarily tell everyone the truth to answer your question overnight. A lot of people won't accept it. I mean, the things that are happening that I'm involved in regarding perhaps alien stuff and regarding the RV stuff, take away the need to know basis on it. It's just too much for someone who's never listened to anyone, you know, an experiencer or someone with advice. They just can't cope with it. Good things don't happen to good people, do they? Only bad people are successful, or people with a certain background. Why would ordinary, decent people actually get anything? That don't accept it because they've been so brainwashed and trodden down. That is why we're through this painful process that's taking years. Next question. How much time have I got left? It's time, it's time. All right. So I can't give the present away. What can I do? Hmm? Oh, yeah. Right, the boss says 5 minutes. I will.
See, I do magically hold, I hope, a genuine AA 100, I've forgotten even the number now, the 100 trillion note. Yeah. Would that still be valid for my project into CC to support a humanitarian project in the future?
You do not, no, thank you. If anybody needed to ask a question, that was the one. That's a good question. No, no, no. There are a number of RV platforms that have gone and told people, get yourself a Zim note, the AA serial is the right one, get yourself a Zim note and then give the organisation the serial number and I'll give you a safekeeping receipt, an SKR, you have that, and then you're going to get the money and then you come to me, etc. etc. That's all. No, 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 no. What's happened is I have those bonds. And I have sent those bonds to where they need to go. And that is what is funding the project. So nobody needs to have any money. Nobody needs to give me any money. All you need to give me is your good heart, your ability to deliver a project, and your determination to see it through. And what I will get is financial funding, which allows us to roll the projects out across the world. So, no, I know people went down that road, but that was because they weren't really in the know. They weren't really part of the discussion. You know, there's only Carol here, who's my PA, and Becky, who's my wife. Only they know the number of phone calls and messages throughout the day that I take from people in a position who would know. And unless you're in that position, you're guessing. And it's incredibly dangerous, in my humble opinion, to promise things to people which you yourself are not convinced you can deliver, because you are setting people up to fail. So, but your note, frame it, put it on the wall. Okay, it's a real piece of history, because when JFK was murdered, 63, and the 120 odd generals and admirals came together, they worked out a plan how they would wrest control away from the evil forces, but how you would have to keep humanity with you. But why, rhetorical, why would you spend half of your life removing evil trillionaires, billionaires, millionaires, only to replace it with another million people clutching a Zim note that you have no clue who they are, and give them millions, and then they go and give it back to the evil people? That's why it's not going to happen. That's why people like me have been chosen. That's why I've got 4 non-circumventing, non-disclosure agreements, and if I break those agreements, I don't have any money. CC doesn't have any money. We don't go anywhere. Well, that's not going to happen, is it? But that's the deal. Okay, next question. Have we got two more? Take 3 and that's it, and I'll have to call it a day.
You mentioned about the provenance and authenticity of this money in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
Why does that matter if digital currency is will take over?
Because digital currency is not going to take over.
Is it not?
No, not at all. The CDC, the central bank's digital currency, was just a complete blind to frighten people, just like eating insects is a really good thing for you, or we're going to kill all the cows in this country, or we're going to produce all this smoke that's going to hang over Canada or somewhere. There will be a digital form of currency, but it is not going to take the place of physical notes. That is disinformation, partly from the bad guys, but also from people who are good-hearted and have completely don't sit on the phone calls that I sit on. So no, there's always a place for gold-backed cryptos, as long as it's asset-backed. But there's not many of those. Right, another one. Guy at the back. Can you speak up? I can't hear you.
QFS, have you got info on, is that ready to go, or will go once Biden's gone? And obviously, just more info about that.
All right, so the guy is a money man over there and wants to know all about the QFS. I'm not going to answer that question. Bless you, bless you. It is covered by my NDA. I can say to you that it's this year.
So you're not going to say, one thing, I don't know whether you could answer this other follow-up, but it was my understanding that the money you have in your banks is going to be mirrored onto the QFS, whereas there's someone I personally communicated with, Dr. MS, says you've got to lose all your money, you've got to put all your money into crypto, which I do not,
well, if you're running a cryptocurrency, that's a great plan, isn't it? Yeah, no, yeah, so no, look, I've tried to do it on my podcasts, and I gave the story when I worked for a local authority that large amounts of money were placed in shopping malls, etc., etc. That was all part of the pension fund. If there was a collapse of the nature that's being spoken of, it's ordinary people that would suffer. Okay, yes, the big guys would, but they would be ordinary people. Pensions wouldn't be paid. There wouldn't be any money to pay the emergency services, etc., etc. The white hats have husbands, wives, brothers, sisters, children, grandchildren. They do not want the world to collapse. No, this is part. I mean, you know, we hear of a CC member who gave $6,000 to somebody pretending to be me. You know. And this is what people do. They pretend to be members of the community who have got a voice, and they just don't have a normal job. No, anybody says to you, put your money in crypto, I would just say to them, no thank you, don't do it. I think we need to stop, don't we? Yeah, the boss says I've got to stop. Look, lovely to speak to you. When the RV is done, we're going to have our own CC conference in many countries. And coordinators will be paid to travel. You have your hotel will be paid for. You will not need to pay, and be no entrance fee. And that will also be for administrators in CC and other key workers. But it will be in a very large arena, and we'll do that. So listen, thank you ever so much. God bless you all. Lovely to see you.